Hi, welcome to Strength Reversed. It's Amy. Thank you so much for being here today. It is a lovely day in spring break and it feels summery but breezy and the weather's perfect, so I just took a long walk. But I have been called lately to make another installment in my Tarot Spiral series, and this is the series where I usually am studying something related to tarot and I'm trying to let it percolate. And so this is where I'm coming to a new understanding of some aspect of tarot reading, and I just want to talk it through, and this is what I'm doing today. And today's topic is court cards. I'm feeling called to the court cards lately, especially to the knights, and I think my next tarot spiral video will be about that. But what I kind of, dove into this rabbit hole of information, and that is about the elemental correspondences to the court cards, and one way of, I guess, figuring out court cards or getting a handle on them, because they are a little sticky. Now, I did put a message out on my community tab and also on Instagram, so make sure that you send me a response of how you remember the court cards, or what is the trickiest part of the court cards for you, if they're tricky at all. Maybe you think the court cards make perfect sense. So I think the reason why court cards are so difficult to get a handle on, and they're the part of a guidebook that I kind of don't read because it's like too much information. And that is because they can represent many things. I guess in a reading, when I get a major card, I know that is going to represent something karmic, something bigger than mundane life, something that maybe we don't necessarily have a lot of control over. And the minors can represent more earthbound day-to-day stuff and things that we can change. And together there's probably different factors happening, but what the hell do the court cards mean? First of all, for me, if I read for myself, then I'm reading for myself, and the court cards are all about me. But if I'm reading for someone else, I really like the reading to be querent focused. And so when a court card pops up, it's usually pretty easy to have that meaning assigned to the querent. So the court card for me is usually an aspect of the querent's personality, or how they're approaching something, and that is easy to decipher. But court cards can also be about situations, and they can also be about other people, and they can also be archetypal energies. And how do you know which it is? Well, you don't. It's just a feeling. So when I have one court card pop up, to me, it's easy to associate it with the querent. If it's one or two that pop up, and maybe we asked about a job and one of them obviously seems to be the boss, then that's easy to talk about maybe it being another person. The only time that things, I think, get a little bit crazy is when many court cards pop up, and I think that can be just a confusion of different energies, almost a too many cooks in the kitchen kind of feeling. And sometimes I feel like the person sitting in front of me, or maybe it's myself, needs to work on setting some boundaries and dismissing the people who aren't doing it for them. So that can all be court card. It's just kind of an energy or a way of a personality type. And we all, there are lots of tags and whatnot where we pick a court card, and that's almost a trick question, because a court card to represent ourselves, it can change. It really depends on the day, or it depends on, I'm having a year where I'm the Queen of Swords, or I'm having a day where I'm the Knight of Wands, or it can really change. And we all at some point or another embody these different personality types. So I asked people, and I did get some responses about how people approach the court cards. And there are lots of different ways. the whole physical characteristic, like, you know, the suit of wands represents someone who's blonde or fair or red. I mean, that to me, I don't even go there. To me, they do not represent male, female. It can be anyone. And court cards, I just have I'll just take the pages here. Pages to me represent, you know, a younger energy. It could be a young person if we're talking about someone specific. But when I read, because it's querent focused, I'm so rarely saying, oh, this person's in your future. I'm not really trying to describe a person and what they look like. And that's just not really generally what I would be doing with tarot cards. But some people might get that specific. Another way to approach court cards is the who it reminds you of, and assigning a person to each of the court cards. And I know this exercise is in, and I'm not going to be able to find it, Nancy Antonucci's first book. She has a second book out, but her Psychic Tarot book, she talks about assigning court cards to either celebrities or people in your life, and that can be useful. For me, the Queen of Wands is always my friend Tracy, and the King of Swords is always Severus Snape, and that just helps me get a handle on that personality type, and it's a little bit easier to understand and remember that way. Now, there's also an astrological correspondence. So you can assign an astrological sign to each of these court cards. And Mitchell Osborne had a very interesting live, and if I can find it, I will link it here or here. And it was about, and I might be getting this wrong, but for example, the queens are the mutable signs and the kings are the fixed signs and that kind of thing. Now, for me, I glaze over, okay? That's like right over my head. But some people find astrological correspondences to be especially helpful, but I don't. If I'm getting a reading from someone and they tell me Virgo, blah, 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 it doesn't really mean that much to me in more than a very general way, and it's not the information I really want. So I don't really go with the astrological stuff. But then there's also the Golden Dawn way, and that is to assign not only an element to each suit, but also an element to each court card. And that's what I want to talk about today. Now, let me, before we talk about that, just talk about the 4 suits and the elements of the suits. And I made a little video, which I will link, I'll put a card up here, of how I reset a deck, and I reset the 4 suits in a specific order. Now, the order, for some reason, stuck in my brain. I got this, I don't know where. It's one of those tidbits of information that you encounter somewhere, and it just makes perfect sense to you, and so it just becomes part of your, you know, relationship with the tarot, and you have no idea. it's the source is lost in the ether. I don't know, but this person had the order like this: first swords, then wands, then cups, and then pentacles. And that was because of the creative process. That first you had an idea, and then you kind of got inspired and did a lot more ruminating and put some passion into it. And then you kind of nurtured it and went through this gestation period, and then it is manifested into physical reality. And I switched that. That made sense to me, but I switched the order because to me, first you're inspired and then you start planning and getting a bunch of ideas, but that little spark of inspiration comes first. And so I have always reset my deck in this order: wands, swords, then cups, then pentacles. I guess I should flip-flop it for the video. Okay, so in my brain, that's how the suits go. And there are some things I like about this and some things I don't like about this. It goes, you know, the cup and the pentacles are both feminine suits. And so I didn't like that it goes masculine, masculine, feminine, feminine. That bothered me, and I kind of wanted it to go every other. Why? Because I just do. Okay, I just do. And so that always kind of stuck in my head, but this makes sense to me. So I have this book, The Complete Illustrated Guide to Tarot by the one and only Rachel Pollack. And here's what she says about the suits and the elements. One way to understand the elements and the suits is to describe them as a process of creation. Fire begins it with the spark of inspiration. And I was like, oh my God, I was right. Water receives the initial impulse or desire. We contemplate what we want to do and we fantasize about the possibilities. Isn't contemplation and all of that more of a swords thing? I didn't get the water sparks fire because those are ill-dignified, and I don't think that happens between those two elements, but whatever. And then air, the mental element, plans and develops the project further. Earth, the element of physical activity, represents the finished project. And so the order that, I don't know if it's she or the Golden Dawn or whoever puts these in, is Wands, Cups, Swords, Pentacles. And that kind of gave me a headache because I flip-flop these two. Now, to me, first you plan and then you start creating and building. But then I thought, well, if it's, for example, creating life, there's the spark, and then during gestation, that's when you're planning and you're preparing and you're nesting, and that doesn't all happen before you're doing the actual building. That happens kind of concurrently. And I was excited that it was masculine, feminine, and it seemed so balanced. But then I just have a problem with the wands cups. I feel like the sword needs to come first. So I was stuck on that. But then I thought maybe I really want to convince myself that it should be Wands, Cups, Swords, Pentacles, because I started thinking about the assigning elemental qualities to the ranks in the court cards. This is not my idea, of course. This idea has been around forever and ever and ever. And I've looked at this idea before, but like I said, got on a court card jag and decided court cards and I need to make friends. This is happening. And I've had this idea about the knights for probably 2 years, about how I think of the knights in the court cards, and I really need to make a video about that. But then this whole rabbit hole thing happened. Okay, so in the Golden Dawn, this is how the elements are assigned to each of the ranks. Pages are pentacles. Knights are air, so that's swords. Let me just do the elements. Pages are earth. Knights are air. Queens are cups, and kings are fire. And I was really disappointed because I've learned this before, okay? And I've studied this in a tarot meetup where we broke that down. And so the page of, wands is earth of fire, okay? So it's those two elements are working together in that card. And then the page of pentacles is earth of earth. And so that's a really, each suit has one court card that is the quality of that suit. And I really like that idea. And that way of remembering the court cards really, really works for me. So in that system, the Knight of Wands would be heir of fire. And the Knight of Wands, air and fire work together, where fire can put out, or air can blow out a flame, but knights have a lot of flame, and so that air probably just fans the flames, and it can burn the place down if you're not careful. And so I like the idea of remembering the court cards elementally. It just makes sense to me. But here's what doesn't make sense to me. Now, I like that because here's what happens. If you go with this order that Rachel Pollack has, or the Golden Dawn has, and you have wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, and you put that court card system down, it would be the exact opposite, and it would work perfectly. So you would have pages, knights, queens, and kings. And so it would just be in the same order. Do you understand what I'm saying? It would be the same thing. But then, I'm thinking of this, and everyone pretty much agrees on the feminine elements. So that is water and earth. And we all pretty much agree that pentacles are pages, earth is pages, and cups or water are queens. But it's those two masculine elements, the air and fire, that people really disagree on. And I feel like I understand assigning air to knights and fire to kings. I can get it. You can get your mind around that. But for me, it just makes more sense that knights are fire. Knights should be fire. Knights are about action. Knights are about passion and movement and getting things done. To me, knights are fire. Kings should be air, because kings they're the leaders of their suit. They are the teachers, because the pages learn and the kings have mastered the suit, and it's their job to teach the pages. And they are having to communicate, and they're having to make decisions. And so for me, that just makes more sense. That's very cerebral. It's about perceiving and communicating and listening to people and being a good leader. That to me is more air. There's another reason why I really want kings to be air and not fire. And that is because queens and kings, in my mind, are both they've both mastered the suit. Okay, they're the masters of the qualities and the elements of that suit. They're two sides of the same coin, and one does not outrank the other. They are just different. They are not opposites. So the queen, it has mastered these qualities on a more internal level. And the king shows mastery outwardly, and they're the ones who have to kind of interact and make all this stuff work. It's not an understanding of themselves or of relationships. It's more leadership. So the queens are water. The kings can't be fire, because that's ill-dignified. Those are opposites. They don't work together, and they should complement each other. Water and air are neutral, but the symbol for the high priestess is the chalice, and the symbol for the high priest is the sword, right? Am I wrong? Is it the wand? I mean, either way works. You see where I'm going with the chalice and the sword. You see what happens. So, but I feel like fire and water, should it be opposite? Would that make sense? It just doesn't make sense to have those two ill-dignified, because they kind of cancel each other out almost. And I mean, so I'm looking for something that fits in my brain and seems balanced. I don't know about the cup. I don't know about water before air. Do you see my dilemma? Okay, prove me wrong. Tell me that kings should be fire. Tell me that cups should be before swords. So I'm kind of letting this digest. And I need to get this digested so I can assign meaning to the cards that I've already assigned meaning to in my mind. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of information. And okay, anyway, I'm going to stop talking. Do you understand what I'm saying, though? The suits and the courts, I want them to fit together magically and perfectly in a perfectly balanced way. And those two systems should be in a different order in my mind. Like each of them, they don't click in my mind. So I want to know what I should be assigning the king or the knight, because they both make sense to me, but I really want it to be balanced. Help me out. All right. I hope this makes sense and it hasn't been too rambly, and I'm sure there will be more court card videos coming up. Thanks, guys. Like and subscribe.